The next, what about maturity transformation? Remember, we present in the first chapter or in the first section definition of bank as the financial intermediary between two parts or two units, supply side and shortage side and the surplus side, demand and supply. So the bank can bridge the gap or solve the conflict between borrowers and savers or depositors by the following. Number one, small or size transformation. In case of size transformation, the bank collect small size deposits and converted or transformed into the large loans by using what? By using economies of scale principle. By using economies of scale principle. What do I mean by economies of scale? The case when the costs of joint production lower than the cost of separated production for two products. Okay? The second rule for the bank, maturity transformation. What do we mean by maturity transformation? In this case, we focus on time. For maturity transformation, we focus on time. So, banks are said to borrow short and lend long. So, in this case, maybe there is a mismatch between the assets and liabilities. For the same, we can use the following. Banks can collect short-term funds or deposits and converted into or transformed into medium and longer term loans. So in this case, for maturity transformation, we focus on time, not size. In the first rule, we explain the size transformation, but in this rule, maturity, we talk about the time or the transformation from short term funds into medium and long term loans. For example, when we talk about the funds for short term, like demand deposits, okay, when the bank convert the demand deposits to the 25-year resident mortgage. So there is a difference between the time, between the deposit time, this is short term, and residential mortgage, this is long term. Okay. Banks engage in the maturity transformation to earn the gap between interest income and interest expenses. This is very important. Interest income and interest expenses. So in this case, in general, when we talk about the income statements and balance sheet for the bank, mainly the balance sheet. Balance sheet for the bank different for any balance sheet for any firm. So what about the asset when we talk about when we define the bank as accepting deposits, okay, and offering or providing loans, okay. Deposits reported in which side in the bank balance sheet? Deposits reported in the which side in the balance sheet? In this case, when we talk about deposits, deposits for bank equal liabilities. Deposits for bank equal liabilities. Okay, because this is the source of fund, the source of money for the bank. Deposits reported in liability side in the balance sheet for the bank. But what about loans? Loans for banks reported on asset side. Okay, so we will use the word the bank as this example. Okay, this is problem number 1 2. Given the following simple balance sheet for the bank. Okay, this is the simple balance sheet for the bank. The values in billions of dollars. Okay, when I said that the bank today pays 4%, pays. When the bank pays, in this case we talk about deposits. The bank pays, in this case we talk about deposits. Deposits reported on into liability side. On the other hand, the bank receives 8%. So in this case, receives 8% from the loans, and loans reported on the asset side. So deposits reported on liabilities and loans reported on the asset side. In general, we classify assets and liabilities into two main categories: sensitive and fixed. What do we mean by sensitive? Sensitive equal fluctuated. When the interest rate decline or increase, the same the interest decline or increase. But fixed, no relationship with any modification in the interest rate. For example, you make a contract with the bank or a deposit for the bank with fixed return, say 10% for 5 years. In this case, fixed return. So no relationship with any decision from the central bank. If the interest rate increase or decrease, you earn this fixed. So in this case, maybe assets. We classify assets into sensitive equal fluctuated for the any modification in the interest rate, and fixed no relationship. The same for liabilities. We converted liabilities into sensitive and fixed. Sensitive, so any modification in the interest rate, there is a high response or the same modification for this liability, but fixed, no relationship. Back to our problem. Sensitive asset, the value equal 15 billions. Fixed assets, the value equals 60, so the total equals 75. Sensitive liabilities equal 25. Fixed liabilities equals 50, so the value equals 75. So in this case, to measure the bank profitability, we focus only on sensitive assets and sensitive liabilities. Sensitive assets and sensitive liabilities. Okay. Calculate the immediate profit. Assess the gap. This is required. Assess the gap when the central bank pushes up the interest rate by 2% on each side. Assess the gap. This is case number 3. When the central bank pushes up interest rate again by 1%. Okay, what about our answer? P or L? P, profit, L, loss, equal interest rate on sensitive assets minus interest rate on sensitive liabilities. All in all, interest rate on sensitive assets, IRSA, when we talk about revenues for the bank. Interest rate on sensitive liabilities when we talk about expenses for the bank. Okay, what about IRSA? IRSA, interest rate on assets. Okay, in this case we talk about 8%. 8% multiply sensitive assets, 15. Okay, so 8% multiply 15. We talk about the sensitive assets or revenues, minus what about the value of liabilities? Liabilities, we talk about the payment from the bank, 25 billions. 25 billions. What about the rate? 4% for liabilities. So 25 billions multiply 4%. The gap equal 200 million as a profits. 200 million as a profits. Okay, this is the first case. The second, when the central bank increase or pushes up the interest rate by 2% on each side, okay? So the 8% converted to 10 because the central bank increased 2%. So the 8% converted to 10, 4% converted to 6%. What about the gap? The gap equals 0. So we started with 200 million as a profit, but the second case we took about 0. No profit, no loss. No profit, no loss. Case number 3. When the central bank pushes up the interest rate by another 1%. So we will increase the interest rate from 10 to 11, from 6% to 7%. What about the output? The output equal negative 1 million. Negative 1 million in this case equal loss. So we started with 200 million as a profit. Central bank increased the interest rate by 2%, so the value equals 0. Another increase by 1%, the output equal negative 1 million. This is a loss. But remember, the first or the main assumption in our case, the central bank increase the interest rate. So the next problem 1-3. The same givens but different assumption. So we assume in the second case or problem 1-3 that the central bank decrease the interest rate. So the same givens, we started with 200 million as a profit, okay, the same with the first case. But what happened when the central bank pushes down the interest rate by 1%? So when the interest rate in the first case 8% converted to 7, 4% converted to 3. So in this case we took about profit by 300 million. So the first case 200 million as a profit, the second case increasing in profits and equals 300 million. Case number 3, another decreasing in the interest rate by 1%. So 7% converted to 6%, 3% converted to 2%. What about the gap? The gap equal 400 million. 400 million as a profit. So based on this case for this bank, in this case, when the central bank increase the interest rate, bad news for this bank because we transformed from 200 million as a profit, 0, negative 100. But when the central bank decrease the interest rate, we transformed from 200 million as a profit, 300 million and 400 million.